All right, Brendan Galdoni, appreciate your time today, sir. I know you're a busy man.
Thank you, Chuck. Thanks for inviting me and good seeing you.
My pleasure. So you and I go back to 2018. I was a new consultant at your organization. I believe you interviewed me, actually.
I did.
What were your thoughts at the time?
So I interview probably thousands of people across my career, and some of the times you just walk out of there like, okay, no, or yeah, hire. And it was one of those rare occasions where I was just like, you know what, that's probably the right person for the job. We need someone who's more the adult in the room but takes the responsibility. And it was just good to talk to you.
Likewise, it was a good chat. I remember that. It was an extensive interview. I want to say I interviewed with like maybe 5 or 6 of your peers because the project itself that I was being hired for at the time was very cross-functional. But no, that's what I shoot for, is that kind of like, hey, this is a good fit both ways, and it makes sense. I can solve the problem that they're saying they have, whether it be the technology, driving the team, cross-functionally, et cetera. So it's good to hear that kind of feedback. So let's talk about, obviously, we did a plethora of projects and things over that time, but I really want to focus on just like our interactions, right? Like I distinctly remember, kind of busting your chops in meetings, and, clearly you're an executive at the organization, but we had a great banter, and I always felt like I could do that with you because there was a trust built of he's running the project. So whatever fun he has is fine.
Yeah, I always like to say we leave our egos at the door, and we definitely give benefit of the doubt. And I know projects are never going to go perfect, and it's better to walk into a room knowing that you can just be authentic and actually say bad news and receive bad news. I mean, that goes both ways. I mean, you've told me plenty of bad things about projects, and I've said, well, hey, this is what's going wrong on your side. And we just had a good conversation about it. It really was never personable, but the big thing is kind of like with the interview. I just left the room and like, I could work with that person. I could see myself, not going insane if they were in the cube next to me or sharing the same office, or if I had to chat with them, through all hours of the day.
Yeah, and we definitely had those experiences over the time that we worked together. Yeah. And we've kept in touch since. You and I probably haven't done a project formally together since 2021?
Yeah, probably 2020.
2020? Okay,
yeah,
so
it's been a while.
It's been a while.
And you touch on like the pivotal year of like, everything was still in person, but that bond, or that, you feel good about, you want to meet with somebody, it's still there. I mean, I cannot tell you how many times I look at my calendar in the morning, at night, like, oh, that one meeting's coming up. And it's not like it's a bad thing. It's just that sometimes you just have better chemistry with other people, that you look forward to things. And it's really about that there's a conversation. It's not always like my agenda or what's going on with me, even though I'm the client, and which you always willfully respected that and bought plenty of coffee. I appreciate that. But the side of it is work is where we spend most of our time. And our adult time, we like to say we spend more time with our family, and we're never going to stay in our dying bed. I wish I would have spent more time with the project. But you know what? Spending time with you, Chuck, it was that I think that's one of the things that made the difference. It was knowing that, yes, I know there's a launch day, or I know something bad happened that night, of a bad release or something like that. And the next morning I walk in and you're still smiling. You still have, a good rapport with everyone. And when you're in a project that's matrixed across an organization, heavily influenced by the executives, especially on the finance side, the big piece of it is knowing that you're building the relationships. And when you bring a consultant in, the real key is you want to have them build those relationships quick, because consultants are, by nature, usually more expensive than employees, and you want to make sure that the time is as efficient as possible.
So talk a little bit about some of those efficiencies, right? Like, what were some of the differences that you experienced, whether it be, in build, testing, actual financial, management, et cetera? Like, I want to hear your vantage point.
Yeah. So I'm going to go to the areas of projects that no one really talks about. So let's talk about procurement.
Okay.
And finance. I knew that you built those relationships early on, and that you weren't, spending hours upon hours with them, but you've met them, they know who you are, They recognized what's going on. And when there was a problem and we had to talk to procurement, and procurement's never fun because then you got involved legal, you got to figure out how we're going to pay for it and everything. You were able to accept the challenge. Literally, I think you probably got on Slack with that person. It was like, okay, yep, I'm going to meet with them in 20 minutes. And by the end of the day, it was like, okay, here's the path forward.
Yep.
You know, it wasn't smooth like, no, don't worry about anything. But it's like, okay, here's what we're going to do next. Here's the next, steps that we can take and keep moving forward together.
You mentioned kind of coming out of the interview, you're like, I could see myself working with that person. What were some of the things that continued to reaffirm that over the course of our time together?
Oh my gosh. So during the interviews, the thing that I find it really hard is being the one always asking the questions. And of course, by nature, I'm the interviewer, you're the interviewee, but you ask thoughtful questions, not throwaway questions like some other candidates might have or other consulting companies. And it wasn't questions that were meant to, BS me too much or to say like, hey, you're a great company or this is whatever, and try and like spin it positive. It was genuine interest in what was going on and just learning more about the company we're working with.
Yeah, I was very curious about the work itself, the people, the structure. Like, it's interesting. It is. I always view an interview as a two-way interview.
Yeah.
And I'm trying to figure out, is there a problem for me to solve? Because quite frankly, I'm not interested in a situation where it's like, just run this project, right?
Right.
I feel like that's not the value that I bring. Complex situations, lots of like complexity from a people standpoint, from a technology standpoint, from an operational standpoint. That's where I see the value.
Well, yeah, and again, if I can just dive a little deeper into that, yes, we could find the consulting firms of the world that are expensive and have deep pockets and do lots of fun things and throw concerts for their employees, their clients. Anybody can handle something complex. With enough money and time, they can do that. Anyone can handle difficult situations. Can they handle it well? The big thing that's always missing in projects is going back to the personalities. You identified, who were the not only the key leaders, because we said, hey, this person is paying for it, this person's the one who wants it, but identifying who are going to be the real pillars that you're going to work with. And some of them are not as stable as others, which you were able to identify that, and you anticipated some of those things, because really, anytime you do a project, it's about change, and some people don't handle change well. They like what they're doing, but because they knew that what we were doing together and had confidence in it, I think that came a lot from you.
Okay, so first time I'm hearing that. That's insightful.
Yeah.
Go a little further with that. Like, I'm really, what brought that together? What drove that? Because again, like this is news to me.
No, think about this. We've been in meetings when there's small meetings, planning meetings, staff meetings, big room planning meetings, but meetings that were more so, call it senior leadership meetings. You made sure that everybody had a chance to talk. You did things like what we're doing right now. You have good eye contact. You're smiling about it. You're happy about what you're actually doing, and it shows that you actually really care. But you took the time not just to answer the C-levels questions or my questions, but the people that you knew that probably weren't as comfortable bringing bad news, and you wanted to address it and let them, give them a safe space, if you will, to air whatever thing might be going on in the project, good or bad.
No, that's very insightful. You brought up bad news a lot, and I always say I'm a professional deliverer of bad news. Talk a little bit about, you're an executive, right? You've hired me to do a job, to consult, to help drive initiatives, to drive people, et cetera, process across the board, right? Talk about the multiple times I've had to bring you bad news, how it was perceived by you. Just the experience. I just want to hear about the experience.
Yeah, I mean, going back to the human factor, because projects are not just about bringing in consultants in, it's working with the full-time employees who are there, bringing in potentially other contractors to actually implement the work. So you have a lot of personalities that you're dealing with, and humans by nature are things happen, whether it's a family event, a major environmental event that you have to shift resources around. And when you would bring bad news, you wouldn't just come out and say it. You'd say, hey, how's your day going? Good. Did you get enough coffee, Brendan? Yeah. You're seated? Okay, good. Check, check, check. Okay, here's what's broke. But don't worry, it feels like it's on a scale of, whatever, X to whatever, but we have a couple options. Mm-hmm. And that was the big piece of it is instead of you just leaving problems at my feet, some things you had to, like blockers that were just impenetrable or you couldn't go around or you've tried to go around, having that as knowing that it's just like, okay, he's just not going to throw something at me. If it's gonna be something, it'll be big, but otherwise there'll be options.
No, that's thank you for sharing that, because it felt like you plugged into my mind a little bit. So that is a strategy of mine, is to not bring you any problems, to solve those problems. To your point, there are a few that I cannot solve, but anything that I can solve, I will. I really try to be essentially an extension of yourself, right? Like, I imagine that most leaders at your level are thinking to themselves, if I could multiply myself across my organization, cascade that down, everything will run smooth, right? And my thought process is, they can hire that person that can quickly understand, build a rapport where I understand your mindset, and then try to cascade that down to solution problems all day. Yeah. Because you own too much to do it yourself, right?
Right.
So it's good to hear directly from the end users that goal was achieved.
Yeah, I mean, any project has a beginning and an end, and no matter how agile we want to make it sound, there are mini waterfalls. Mm-hmm. And a lot of project management or even some PMO that I've worked with are very linear in their thought. Mm-hmm. And they're like, okay, we have this big problem, it's a problem, no options. You look at it and you look not just linear, you look, almost object oriented, you look sideways. What else could we do? Is there something we can put in place here? Can we start a different work stream because so-and-so, just became a new parent or something like that? Mm-hmm. There was always that insightfulness because you knew what was going on, not just with the stakeholders, the projects, the budget, but the people and the personalities.
Yeah, so you're talking the relational aspect.
Oh, 100%.
Which I feel like, everybody says that, but it's another thing to do it, and to your point, at a detailed level of what's really going on with this project team, right? I think that's a lost piece of the art of what it is that we do as consultants.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I feel like, as I've gotten farther in my career and then also become a parent, I'm like using things that I've learned in HR and how to deal with employees on my kids, and then vice versa, back and forth, and try and understand those complexities because, at the end of the day, we are human and we want to spend time with quality people. And the thing is the way I look at this is when I'm thinking of, hiring an agency or bringing in a vendor, the thing I think about most is like, what was my last experience? Was it good? Mm-hmm. And then I start thinking about, well, okay, yes, was it good because it was on time or whatever? But then I really take a step back and like, I bet you that person, like Chuck Scott, would hire other Chuck Scotts, or at least people that are like him, because you're building the brand and you want to work with somebody who's similar to yourself.
Yep. No, you nailed it. I'm looking for other people that have similar mindsets as me, can
play hockey.
Well, hockey's a bonus, but not a requirement. No, I'm looking for people that can engage on the same level as me with executives and people that do the work themselves, and everybody in between. And to your point, you mentioned like kind of being unilateral in the way that I approach things. So, okay, my business users and other key stakeholders and people that need to be informed in the organization. And then even looking at the work that way too. If we implement this solution, is our operational element that needs to be considered. What about marketing? What about the end user? Like all these things are moving pieces that have to be part of the same big picture. And big picture is a part of it. At your level, you need to know big picture. You also need to know what impact happens at the big picture.
Yeah. I mean, having the benefits tied to everything that goes along with it, because we can build the best piece of software in the world or implement some fantastic MarTech. If we don't deliver it in a way that the end users, back to the change management, feel comfortable with the system, that's the differentiator. Is, are they being handed off something that they're going to use long term? Will they change? Will they find extra benefits out of it that they didn't know before. Those are all those things when you talk through a project and you bring in either if it's marketing or big data, it all impacts how do they actually want to use the tool. And if they're using it, then they're getting the value out of it. But if you're not driving the car, it just sits in the driveway.
What was the point?
Right.
Yeah. I mean, when you're talking millions of dollars, you want there to be a point, more than just ROI, right? Like there's a lot of customer focus these days for end users. And so, your organization, you as an executive were no different, right? Like that was in mind, but I look at my clients that way. So it's good to hear that, that focus translated and drove value for you at your level. And it sounds like with your peers as well.
Yeah, and just another differentiator why I think it was different is because sometimes when working with vendors and consultants, they are hired for a specific task, and some of them like to stay squarely in their lane. You have a sense of humility that's like, okay, I'll do it. Yep, no problem. We can set that up, whether it's putting together a deck for the an executive review, or literally like, hey, we got to schedule a big room event, and I'll make sure there's food there, and doing the event planning. No task is out of reach, really.
No, that's a great insight. I always say this, in the realm of consultants, you normally have people that are confident enough and present well enough to interface with executives. They don't go beneath like what I call director level work, right? Like they won't put together a plate.
Dirty.
Yeah, they don't get their hands dirty with the team, and hence that creates a disconnect between the project team and that person. So they get perceived as just being this, kind of taskmaster all day instead of part of the team. And then you also have the flip side of that. People that will be in the weeds, will build you the best project plans, the best, playbooks, et cetera, will run a Jira, inside and out for you. But you cannot put them in front of executives because they can't answer questions. They can't, they don't know how to present data in the right way. They're not prepared. They're not anticipating enough. So,
well, really, it's about knowing what you're doing, but also the audience. And it's the big thing with the executives is the storytelling. Because as long as you still repeat the same thing over and over again, they'll recognize what that pattern is, and then you can say, okay, here's where we are on that spectrum, meaning, are we in progress still? Are we behind? Why did we shift this or whatever it is? Are we still going to meet, at the end together?
Yeah, that's a great way of describing it. And there's a delicate balance between, storytelling that comes from lots of preparation from do we have the processes in place and agreed upon metrics to be able to tell a story? To your point, where we started, how much progress we made, where we are in this journey. Are we defining things, or are we just spinning, right? Like to be able to quickly audit and to articulate that at your level, and then come with if we're not making progress, what are the things that we need, that I need from you, your support, to be able to drive that at the execution level, right?
Yeah. The story is just part of it, but knowing okay, we're missing this epic, or this didn't get groomed enough, or hey, we should have done a POC here, or you know what, we didn't do a POC. Let's take a step back on some things. That's all part of just knowing and owning the project, really.
Yeah.
That's what it is.
One of the fun things I remember from our initial project that we first met on is, it's a big initiative, and like most projects, there's a project charter, there's high level requirements, but again, haven't even engaged with the vendor yet formally, and there's a lot of assumptions. I remember I walked in the door, and day one, I don't know if you remember this or not, day one I was kind of setting the tone for, hey, we're estimating that requirements are going to take about 3 months to hammer out. And at that point, I was kind of grooming you guys from day one at the executive level at that point, I may come to you with a change request, right? Because we really don't know a lot at this juncture.
Yeah.
And I think there was a minor change request. It wasn't as big, but I was just setting the tone for, it may be 10 months, it may be 9 months, it might be 11 months, right? It might be $4 million, it might be $5 million, it might be 3.5, right? It was kind of setting that tone of, we don't know enough yet to be certain, but I'll have a sense of certainty, a better sense of certainty once we get through this phase of the project, right?
Yeah, definitely. That is important to set up for the unexpected, or set up because you've had the experience that that, hey, if they're talking about 3 months of requirements gathering, there might be something else that's missing. If they think it's that big, there could be something larger, and what does that mean to the project? And like you said, a change request equals money, money equals time, but being prepared ahead of time to understand, okay, this is somewhat fluid. It's not going to be, we as a company, we're not 100% prepared to say, hey, here's the plans, go ahead and build the house.
Right.
Because we've never had that much time to work in that detail. And when you're working in digital technology or digital media, everything is still fluid.
Right.
And you can still change things.
It's very good insights. Last questions, right? You've obviously experienced the way that I operate. What are some of the things that, if you were to tell a peer, how would you describe it, or what would you say, is that big difference, or why they should consider me over, any other consulting firm, or, the big four, or et cetera, et cetera, et cetera? Like, what are the intangibles that just don't exist elsewhere?
It's you. It's your personality. It's knowing that you're walking into a room and like, oh, it's not that person again. We all have that. I mean, it's since high school, you always wanted to turn away, if you're walking down the hall with somebody else, instead of walking towards that person. I mean, I think it's why, I'm here. It's why you draw people together, because when you call, it's, yes, you want to talk about business and see what's going on, but we generally want to talk to you. And that's the differentiator when it comes to doing sales or any other consulting or vendor management. It's like, do I want to work with these people again or not? I mean, it's the whole reason people say, hey, we're going to get the band back together because it was great originally. Could we do that again?
Yep. No, you nailed it. I think that's a great summary. Thank you very much, Brendan. Like I said, I've always appreciated our times together, and I thank you for being part of this.
Yeah, I appreciate the invite.